There's a few tweak ups to do, a few spacer posts to put in, gate to finish and stuff, but the main perimeter is set, the charger is running, and things are operational. I thought I would give a short tour of this, since this is something a lot of people don't have experience with and probably should have if you're having deer problems or other animals coming in and eating your stuff. Electric fence is incredibly cheap compared to other fencing, and it's very, very effective, more effective than most other fencings usually. Anyway, this here is a Gallagher B180 Power Plus charger. This has a few different functions on it. Full power, which is 9.8 kilovolts peak, or usually typically 7,000 volts. Half power, which is about half that, obviously. And there's a randomized mode also that it'll randomize anywhere between 1 and 8 seconds, and it'll randomize power levels also. That is hooked to a small 15-watt solar panel, which I don't even actually have mounted yet on the roof. It's just laying there. And also to a battery which stores that solar panel's energy. UB12180FR from Universal Battery. Cheapest place I found to get these was 1000bulbs.com. This is a 12 volt 18 amp hour battery, and actually this is for a wireless mesh network, so I have to get another battery at some point, but this is the only good 12 volt battery I have right now, and I got to protect my crops, so it's in play here. I also occasionally switch it out to run the foliar fear system, which reminds me I should do a video of that too. Anyway, so there's a charge controller and a battery. You have to have a really solid ground for electric fence. That's really what it relies on to be effective. In this case, I didn't have to drive ground rods because there's lightning ground right here. And I knew a grounding system for a lightning rod system would be a super ground. So I just cleaned up the contact point with some sandpaper and slipped the wire connector in and clamped it on. It goes through a lightning arrestor. This is a top ground system. You notice the top wire is grounded. Deer and that sort of stuff aren't going to be exploring up there. That's more of a visual deterrent, so they won't jump it. So it does not need to be hot. To prevent lightning from striking the fence and coming back through the charge controller and cooking the charge controller, instead we use a top ground system here, and that comes into the lightning arrestor, and I'll explain this to you real quick. Lightning arrestor basically has ground connected to ground, and on the top where the hot side comes through to the fence, you see this coil. This is basically an arrestor coil, and you see the gap. This is basically a spark gap. So if a lightning strike comes in, it gets shunted to ground rather than reaching the charge controller and damaging the controller. Theoretically, lightning has its own mind, I have to say, when it does stuff. We had lightning hit a barn and dig a trench back to the house 200 feet away one time up in the Catskills at the family farm. So you can't really predict what it's going to do, but you can certainly do your best to help prevent damage from it. So that said, I highly recommend a lightning arrestor in any electric fence system. If you don't put a lightning arrestor in, you may have to replace one of those charge controllers, and I can tell you right now, that charge controller is about 300 bucks. So it's not something you want to have to buy every time you get a lightning strike. Anyway, I'll take you on a tour of the fence. It's about 776 feet of fence line, and in this case there was concrete here, so I couldn't really bolt to it. I didn't want to put another fence post in, and I plan to change this fence line in the future. It's kind of a temporary location for this right now. But anyway, I just tacked a 2x4 in and bolted my terminals to that. Basically just came through with a weed eater and a pair of clippers and blazed out the fence line where it was going. Knew where I wanted to close and all, and made some posts out of just cut trees and did them, and actually one of the posts is actually a live tree still, so that's not good. Gonna have to get the blackberry off of that fence or it'll kill it. It'll shock it to death on me. Okay. You can hear it snapping. Gotta come out of the fence here, come on. Ah. Oh, nothing like getting shocked and pricked by berries. Well, obviously, this part of the line here is a little low. I'm either gonna raise that point or probably more likely put a spacer post in, which would just cover the first 3 or 4 wires and bring them up so they're not touching. I find that you definitely want to keep your bottom wire fairly low. Otherwise, baby rabbits and small woodchucks can get underneath it without touching the wire, and you definitely don't want that if you're trying to keep them out, obviously. This is another tree-based post. I'm going to come back and space this a little bit higher. Like I said, just finished this last night in the dark, just to get it done and closed and keep the deer out and the woodchucks off the tomatoes, which are really starting to come back. But oh, we got a tomato hornworm here. See the chewing marks there? Very classic indicator. And of course, this is a tomato hornworm. Funny, I was just talking to a friend on the radio about them. Anyway, yeah, got green slime all over me. I saved a couple sassafras trees here because they're just beautiful in the fall. They're the first to get the orange color. And yeah, so this is one of my fence posts is a live oak tree. It's such a nice tree, and I figured if I trim the bottom branches, the morning light which comes from off this way will still get in pretty well. And why take it out? Let's keep it. Maybe we'll get some nice acorns off it. Make some acorn flour. Anyway, that comes down to terminate here. The short post here and the tall post there are going to be switched out, and I'll put a brace across the top of this, and I'll probably guy this out both sides. And then there's a metal gate in the back that's not being used anymore, so I'm going to take that out of there, bring it up here, and that'll close this off. And then the only open space is coming up to right by the main entrance there, where there's quite a bit of activity, so deer and that kind of stuff don't really seem to come through there too much. If they're a real problem, we'll close that off too and put a gate in there as well. But most of my egress of deer is through here. There's actually a deer trail that kind of runs up through there and comes like right down over there. Well, there won't be any more. They are now diverted. So that's why I might end up putting a gate here. You'll notice the jump over wire here is an insulated wire. It's rated for, I don't know, 10 kilovolts or 50 kilovolts or something like that. It's aluminum wire, just buried about an inch in the ground, so that trucks, tractors, that kind of stuff, dragging stuff won't catch anything on it. And that's just how I hop over to this other leg of the fence without having fence wires all over the place and all. Anyway, obviously this side of the fence needs a little tensioning work still as well, but I'm waiting until I switch this post out to do that, and obviously some more trim work to get rose bushes back off. One thing I will say, if you want to keep a fence real hot and efficient, it's a good idea to go back every, say, couple weeks or a month, depending on the weather and how fast your grass is growing. This will have to be lowered too a bit here, that's too high. What was I saying about grass growing? Oh, go through and weed eat. You can just take a weed eater, and actually even when the fence is real low to the ground, you can basically just sweep underneath the fence wire and clear it, and that helps keep your short to the ground down and keeps a much more effective and hot fence. The difference between when you get this stuff mowed out and when you don't have it mowed out is like you can touch it and it doesn't really bother you too much, or you can touch it and it'll give you the adrenaline jolt. So there's a real big difference between the two. This is just another post. This is actually a tree I had to clear out of the way to put the fence in here, so I just recycled and reused it. I guess while we're down here, I'll give you a shot of the corn. That's the Hopi blue flower corn. That's just going into flower now, most of it. The one top corner there is a little deficient in the soil there. I'm not sure what's up with that, but we're going to supplement that some more this coming season and next year, and hopefully by next year it'll be solid. And then the other lower corn over there is Black Dakota popcorn, and hidden amongst that is delicata squash, and also a new strain of split off of that, Della Squata, which kind of looks like a pumpkin, and a delicata striping on it. Anyway, we'll get back to the fence here. Obviously I should trim that back a little more too. This was just a kind of a get the fence in sort of thing. Eventually, you see this is braced right now, but eventually I'm going to guy this post off, because it's got quite an inward lean, and if anything you want an outward lean on electric fence to deter animals from jumping. And instead of walking you all the way up this line, I'll just shoot up it for you, and it basically just goes back to the building up top and closes out, and there's about a 2-foot gap between the tree and the building, so you can walk around and get back and forth without climbing through the fence if you need to. While I'm here, I'll just show you the apple tree quick. I've been foliar feeding this thing and feeding it teas and loving it. It's starting to really size up some apples now. It's probably due for another watering and feeding. Tell you what though, you can see just the vigor of the grass right underneath the tree where it's been foliar fed. Everything's this dark, healthy green. That's because this tree has been loved up good. Guess I'll show you the irrigation quick. Been a dry year. I was hoping to get away with not laying any drip line in, but ended up having to. Fortunately, it's really easy to do. And you'll notice I use my posts on the end as an anchor, and then I can pull the entire line back taut, or fairly taut, right along the corn row, which my string, when I plant, I set my string and I plant offset from the string, my corn row exactly straight to that, and then when I come to lay drip irrigation in, I can pull tight like that, have a nice clean feed. This stuff is kind of finicky. It's meant to be buried underground from a plastic layer, and so this is a little bit different application of it. So I just use an anchor post on the end, and I'll show you on the other end where we pull back through. I guess I'll walk you through the corn. A little bit of potassium deficiency showing up in the bottoms of these. We're going to have to pump some potassium plant help therapy in, and some phosphorus plant help therapy to help fill flowers and fruit. Yeah, see. So on this end where I lay my grid to feed it, I can just pull this tight to the post like that and plug in, and then I end up with a pretty uniform, even grid that's fairly close, so it doesn't get run over by machinery or trimmed up by the weed eater or caught by the tiller and the end and trim till that I do occasionally. This all feeds into one distro connector. All comes through one 1/2-inch line, and that just adapts to the garden hose or whatever water source. 8 pounds of pressure max on this stuff, supposedly, but I have such a big grid that I can actually dump 60 psi from the house in, and across the grid I end up with about 8 psi, which works. It fills them nicely. They drip nicely and uniformly. Too much pressure, they tend to drip a little too fast. Sometimes they'll tear or rip, and you'll get a spot that opens up and you lose pressure across the grid, and then you're not irrigating uniformly anymore, so you got to watch that. While I'm here, I guess I'll just give you a quick tour. This is a new method that I picked up from the 2015 NOFA conference. I forget the speaker's name. It might have been Brian O'Hara. It might have been Mark Fulford. It might have been somebody else. But they were talking about basically farm for instead of tilling, because we're always trying to reduce tilling, because tilling does tremendous damage to your soil. And I have to say, I'm ashamed to have to have tilled this year, but it needed it. Just given my current abilities and equipment, it was really the only option. So I did. But the trick is to eliminate tilling whenever possible. So this is one method to do a kill-off of an area in about 2 days. This method's called solarization. And you basically just take a clear piece of plastic. You go through, I should have mowed this off cleaner, although I wasn't planning to solarize this. Then I found this piece of plastic, got inspired, and decided I was going to do it. But you can see, obviously, if it was mowed off cleaner, it would sit tighter to the ground, and you wouldn't get green spots like here and there in your kill zone. You can see, for the most part, this killed pretty much everything dead, annuals and perennials. It gets it all. And in hot, sunny weather, anywhere from 70 degrees higher and sunny for 2 days, you can kill off an entire area like this. So in 4 passes, which is 8 days, I can kill off this whole area, which I think is about 1,000 square feet. That's that whole mowed zone and the green zone on the edge. So this is an awesome new method. I'm very happy to be able to start working less tilling, and also this costs less gas, time, and energy. It's very easy to lay a piece of plastic out. This took me like, I don't know, 5 or 10 minutes to set up, and that's including truck trips up the hill to go grab the weights, pallet weights. So very simple, very easy. On a small scale, or if you're commercial, you can do on a big scale too. Eliminate tilling. So I'll come in after this and plant into this directly, probably something, maybe buckwheat, and probably irrigate heavily to give that a good germination. And then basically I'll be taking this over with the canopy of the plants that I'm growing, and that should kill our weed problem. I meant, this had garlic in it here earlier this season, and I meant to be tilling further in advance of that, but I just didn't get to it. Didn't get the tiller here until later, and a number of events. But that's fine. So the weeds kind of got out of control on me on the garlic. And, I won't be letting that happen again next year, because we're going to cover crop it and build up the soil and wipe out the weeds all in one. Anyway, on my way back up, I'll just show you some delicata squash. I think I over-ferted this one and killed it. That was with a comfrey tea, by the way. So beware, that stuff when it's made right is very strong. You can see the growth in here is phenomenal right now. And that's a Della Squata right there. Right, isn't that cool? Cross between a delicata squash and the pumpkin. And this is an actual delicata squash that hasn't striped out yet. You can see a stripe starting on it. And this is the Black Dakota popcorn. So things are growing well. Yeah, you can see the drip irrigation's on right now, actually. That grid is loaded with pressure. It's about due again. We might get a T-storm here, but it doesn't look like it's going to be a lot. And see, that's a prime example right there. When you get a rip or a puncture, I'm not sure how that even got there. Actually, that shouldn't have a puncture in it, but clearly it does. So that's reducing the grid pressure and slowing, obviously putting water where you don't necessarily want it. So I'm going to fix that. Hold on. Okay, so since that's a double row run, I can afford to eliminate one of these and not lose a lot of coverage. So that's the cool thing about drip, is you can just tie it off and that plugs it. I guess while I'm out here, since I'm giving the tour more than I was planning on, I'll just show you some of these radishes. Yeah, so see the size of this radish. She's a monster. And they're like all through here like that. Huge. Huge. That radish is like a softball. And of course, we're running the seed round, so next year we can run big production on them. Got a couple zinnias in bloom, a few that made it amongst the rose bushes and weeds. Potatoes are starting to finish out season. Starting to do the dieback thing here and there. Good season on those, I think. We've had some already, and man, nothing beats a high nutrition potato. They're like, almost don't need butter. They're almost like buttery without butter. It's just amazing. I tell you, you got to try a Hybrix potato or tomato if you've never had one. You'll never want another kind again. You'll never want anything that wasn't grown in Hybrix again. It's just amazing. Sunflowers taking off nice. All starting to pop out. That tall one there is probably 15 foot, maybe more. Anyway, I think that's a pretty good electric fence explanation tour for now.